Hey guys, thanks for coming back into the cryptoverse. If you guys like this content, please subscribe to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the total cryptocurrency market cap and projections into the future. And if you guys like this content, please like the video, and if you want to dive in further, then check out my Telegram channel in the description below. So today, as I mentioned, we're looking at the total cryptocurrency market cap as a function of time, and we've extended this out all the way until a little after 2025, and we have market cap data that goes back to around the middle of 2010. So what we're going to do is we first have applied this logarithmic regression band to the data, and we try to distinguish between when we're in normal between when we're seeing just normal increases in the price, maybe during accumulation phases as well, and then distinguishing between this bubble data that pops up every few years. And you can see that this one was 2 or 3 years between this peak to this peak, and then 4 years between this peak to this peak. And if we just do what we did in the past for Bitcoin, we're gonna go ahead and draw these lines. So we're just looking at from bottom to top, bottom to top, bottom to top, just to get a more of a visualization at the fact that our ROI from bottom to top is decreasing, and as I mentioned before, it's taking longer for us to even see the diminishing returns as well. Now, one of the things we can note are these peaks, and we can look to see what prices those peaks occur at, or what market caps, I should say. And these are the market caps corresponding to these peaks. Now, many astute observers will note that maybe these market caps are not the exact top from each cycle. This data is actually weekly data, and so I don't actually have, this was not actually done with daily data for the last several years, so I do know there are going to be some discrepancies between what the weekly data says as opposed to maybe what one of the days went up to. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, we're going to look at we're going to look to see these price differences and see if we can come up with any types of correlations. And we're going to first start with the most optimistic case. So the most optimistic case is looking at these ratios. So we can see that the ratio between this peak and this peak was around 100x, and the ratio between this peak and this peak was 63x. So we know that the ratios between the peaks are getting lower and lower, but it's really hard to extrapolate out where the next peak would occur. If we look at the difference between these two ratios, we can see that there's 62%, and if we were to potentially extend that out again, then it would be looking at, say, 39.1x from this peak, which would give us a total market cap of the cryptocurrency market of 32 trillion in 2023. Now, this is actually, I feel like, by far the most optimistic scenario, and I don't think we are going to even come close to reaching this, and I will continue to talk about where I think maybe is a more realistic approach. The reason why this is it's not necessarily that predictive is that looking at these ratios, we don't know that we're going to see the same percentage again. I mean, the next time we see an increase, I mean, this could be 62%, and then this one could be, say, like 30%. It doesn't mean the ratios are going to stay the same as we continue to march forward in time. So this would be the most, I would say, optimistic scenario. Now, if we continue marching through, let's look at the lows from each cycle. So you can see, this was 194,000 up to 129 million, and this was 17 million up to 13 billion, 3 billion up to 128 billion, and 103 billion up to a potential of 32 trillion. Now, as I mentioned, I think this is overestimating, and one of the ways we can visualize this is if we put these ratios in. So from here to here, and note that this is actually somewhat dubious because this is just middle of 2010. Bitcoin was on the market before then. It's just we don't really have reliable price data, so it's possible that this multiplier here might even be a lot more. It could be 800 or 1000x. depending on what specific price you take Bitcoin. So don't pay too much attention to it. But you can see that this was 768x from this bottom to the top, and then this was 233x from bottom to top. So it'd be kind of weird if this were then 313x from bottom to top, because it looks like we're decreasing from this point to this point. And so it'd be kind of weird if we just started increasing again. And as I mentioned, this one, I wouldn't really take too much credence into this point over here. So with that in mind, we're gonna continue to look at potential scenarios that might make a little bit more sense. So this shows, and I don't have the y-axis on here, but this shows the percent difference between the total cryptocurrency market cap and the lower regression line, so the percent difference. So you can see that we're essentially decreasing, but if we were to go up to 32 trillion, then the percent difference would actually completely break this trend, and in fact we would see a percent difference from the lower regression line up to a peak value of almost 4,400%, which is greater than what it was over here. So that that basically says 32 trillion is most likely not on the cards in the next bull run. So what is on the cards in the next bull run? What is something that might happen? Because if you look at this, it doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense. And looking at these regression lines, we're popping up above the regression band, and each time it's getting lower or lower it's not as high from the regression band. So it'd be kind of weird if this one all of a sudden popped way up here. So let's take into account a more realistic scenario. So this was 4,400%. What if we only went up to 1,500%? Which seems reasonable because we're still following this trend here, and it would be basically hitting the max from this trend. Now, if we were to plot that, sorry, I have to keep moving this video around so I don't block anything. If we were to plot that, then it would actually have us moving up to 11 trillion as opposed to 30-something trillion, which seems to be a bit more plausible. And so I just put the 721 billion here because this is where we'd be on the lower regression line by 2023, which is actually, it's pretty similar to the peak over here. So if you were to just draw a line from, say, this peak across, you would basically be at this lower regression line. This would be slightly lower than this peak. So let's say we're going up to 11 trillion. It seems to make sense on this graph here, continuing this one, and moving from peak to peak is a short time period, peak to peak, a little bit longer, peak to peak, it's getting longer. Now, obviously, I don't know if it's going to occur, like, say, beginning of 2023 or late 2022. I don't really know. It might occur in those years, it might not. But if it does, then it seems like, 11 trillion could be a theoretical peak in the sense of the total cryptocurrency market capitalization. So if we continue to investigate this, this would actually be a 112x from this bottom. So it kind of makes sense going from 768 to 233 to 112, where we are getting lower in our ROI, and that's what we would expect. We would expect the ROI from each market cycle bottom to get lower and lower. So if we continue stepping through, let's get an idea of what this might mean for the altcoin market. So if the total market capitalization of cryptocurrency is 11 trillion, then in 2023 the projected supply of Bitcoin would be 19,381,500, and if we just suppose that the potential price of Bitcoin is 140,000, then that would put the market cap of Bitcoin at 2.7 trillion. And if the total market cap is 11.5 trillion, and if we just take those ratios, then it could be that at this peak here, the Bitcoin dominance might only be 23.5%. Now, does this make sense? Like, could we theoretically see a Bitcoin dominance of 23.5% considering where it is now? So, if we look at this chart, you can see we have the Bitcoin market cap over divided by the total market cap of the entire cryptocurrency asset class. So you can see we're more or less in this channel here. We were decreasing from 2013 all the way until 2017, and then we kind of had like a bubble in a sense, a altcoin dominance bubble where we came all the way down. Maybe this was the maybe over here you could say this was the bull trap. Came all the way down, back up, down even further, and then we ultimately have retraced back into this channel. Now, in order for us to get to a Bitcoin dominance of 0.235, we have to be all the way down here. So is that possible? Well, I drew out, something that might happen, and we'll just, I'll let you guys decide if you think it's possible. So what happens if we were just to remain in this channel for the next several years? The Bitcoin dominance might go all the way up to 0.72. It might drop to 0.55. It might just oscillate in this range for a couple years. And then what if, Bitcoin hits its previous all-time high of 20 grand? If it hits it before, then we might drop sooner. But let's just say it hits it, sometime in 2021, then we come back down, and we kind of repeat what happened over here. Then you can see that it's not that far-fetched to think that the Bitcoin dominance might reach around 23.5% very temporarily, and then it might pop back up into this band, and then go back up to around 50%. It is following this band here, but it might just be another bubble in the altcoin market. So that the point is Bitcoin obviously controls the market, and historically, altcoins are dead until they're not dead anymore, and then people are just saying, "I told you so. I knew I was investing in the right coin," even if you've already seen 98% losses. So just keep in mind that Bitcoin will be controlling the market for the foreseeable future. I mean, even if altcoins have a run where you go up 2 or 3x or more. I think we're still a ways off before seeing a huge bubble in the altcoin market like we saw back in 2017. I think that's a fairly decent ways off from where we're currently standing. So just keep that in mind when you're making your own portfolio decisions. This is not financial advice by any means. This is just theories that I'm trying to come up with and determine just based on looking at the math behind the market. Remember, this is the primary graph I want to take away, is looking at low to peak, low to peak, low to peak, low to peak, and thinking that, this sort of does make sense. We're seeing diminishing returns on the ROI, and it's taking longer to get there. So while many of you might think, man, this is taking forever, I really want to see a 10x or a 100x ROI in the next couple weeks, it's probably not going to happen. And if you can't have the patience for it now, imagine how long you might have to wait after this market cycle. If this actually comes to fruition, and then we come back down into this band, I mean, we might be in this band for 5 years before we pop back out of it, which is to put things in perspective. I mean, that's half a decade. That would take a lot longer than potentially just having to wait another 2 years from where we currently are. Now, not that it might take longer than 2 years. It might take less, but the point is these ROIs are diminishing, and I think in terms of Bitcoin, historically, the earlier you get in, the better your ROI eventually will be. In fact, if you look at the 4-year ROI of Bitcoin, there's a video on this. I'll link it at the end of this video. But if you look at the 4-year ROI of Bitcoin, so if you buy Bitcoin and then you sell it exactly 4 years later, it's basically never gone below 10x. I think there were maybe like a couple days where it goes below 10x, but essentially if you're buying Bitcoin and holding on to it for 4 years, historically you would have seen 10x at a minimum. Now clearly that'll be broken at some point. It won't, it probably won't hold that 10x ROI forever on a 4-year time frame. But it's just something to consider. Is that holding Bitcoin for the long term historically will net you a decent return, and buying at the peak and capitulating down here is that's the dumb money talking. So remember, dumb money comes in up here, and then smart money comes in down here. So I would say if you're in this logarithmic regression band, if you're buying Bitcoin in this band, it's most likely going to work out well for you if you can just hold on to your investment for a few years. For instance, if you had bought in the band over here and just held for a year, you would have seen a nice ROI. If you bought in the band here and held for 2 years, you would have seen a really nice ROI. If you had bought in this band and held for 2 or 3 years, again, a huge ROI. And then again, we're currently in the band again. We're in the band. We might be in this band for a while longer. And, I wouldn't consider that to necessarily be a bad thing. I mean, it just means that if you believe in the future of the space, that cryptocurrency will revolutionize industries everywhere, not just in finance, then this could be one of the better opportunities you might have to see such an impressive return on your investment. Now, clearly, we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but just looking at the history of this market, it seems like we are in the time to potentially be buying, and you can see over here. I mean, over here we were in this. I've kind of split it in two halves. So here we were in this upper half of the band. Here we were in the upper half, and then we were in the lower half, and then the upper half again. And then we've spent a while this year in this upper half, and now we've recently crossed into the bottom half. Now, we might come to the bottom half eventually or stay in it, but that doesn't mean that the market cap has to go down. I mean, we could just go sideways for 6 months or a year and be at the bottom of this band, just because the band is always increasing. So just keep that in mind. Again, don't beat yourself up on over timing the bottom, timing the top. I think the best thing to do is just dollar cost average. Try to increase the total amount of Bitcoin you have, or if you're really focused on a specific altcoin, that's fine too. But historically, altcoins, they have their heyday essentially once Bitcoin hit the previous all-time high. Is kind of the first time they really take off as a home market. Now, clearly, there are some coins that will see great returns before that. I mean, there's been a number of coins even this year alone that would have netted you a great return on your investment. But I'm talking about the whole cryptocurrency altcoin market as a whole. Is the whole market cap of it going up? And clearly that doesn't mean every single coin, but we're talking about at least the top 10, excluding Bitcoin, at least the top 10, and then obviously some scattered throughout the top 100, throughout the top 1,000, but not all of them clearly. So if this is what the future looks like, and Bitcoin might be going to 23.5% dominance at the peak of the next cycle, then if that's the case, then altcoins from where they currently are have an astronomical potential if this were to occur, because the altcoin market is really, it's pretty down right now. Most of it is dominated by Bitcoin. So if the altcoin market were to do something where it has around $7 or let's say $8 or $9 trillion to go up, that would be absolutely phenomenal. In seeing that, that would be quite a remarkable event and a true mania phase if something like that were to come to light. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. Maybe. I think 32 trillion is way overshooting, just taking the ratios. 11 trillion seems more reasonable, just because I feel like it kind of follows this trend here. But it's, again, maybe we don't come up to 11 trillion. Maybe we come up just south of it. Maybe we go up to, say, 8 trillion, 9 trillion. Maybe 10 trillion is going to be a huge resistance point. and we'll just go up to say 8 or 9 trillion. Similarly, how we came over here to 828 billion. That's not entirely out of the question either. But regardless, I do think that at least Bitcoin has a very bright future ahead, and I also think that there are a number of other cryptocurrencies that also have a bright future ahead. And now is most likely the best time to really start developing your positions, getting your portfolios how you want them, something you can be happy with, something you can be happy or accept even if it goes to zero. So develop that now. I've often said that bear markets are the building phases. These are the times where you build. These are the times where projects are working hard behind the scenes. This is the time where people are building apps and all sorts of different things. This is the time to build. This is the time to dollar cost average. This is not the time to check prices every other day and worry that your investment dropped some small fraction or some big fraction just on a day-to-day basis. Don't worry about it. I think it's pointless to worry about it, and especially if you have taken everyone's advice and not invested more than you can afford to lose, then there's no reason to worry about that stuff. Look at the big picture. Look at where we are potentially headed in the next several years and focus on that. So if you guys want to dive in deeper into this stuff, I do have a Patreon that you can check out. So if you just want to provide general support for this channel, we try to come at things, from a more data science-y type perspective. We're not just pulling at TradingView every video. But if you want to, it's patreon.com/intothecryptoverse. I'll link it below. $10 a month. It just kind of helps support the channel for the free content I'm providing everyone, and I will put patron-only updates that only you can see. If you want to be a dedicated patron, there's a patron-only chat room that you'll be invited to, and you can download all the charts as I produce them. And if I forget one, just ask for it, and I'll send it to you. Then if you want to do the VIP, then I'll correspond with you one-on-one, and I'll also field requests for different coins in this tier. And if there's one coin that you're really hoping that I make a graph on, you can request it. And if there's enough data, then I'll make it for you and I'll send it to you. So just something to keep in mind if you guys want to jump into that. If you don't, that's fine. Check out the Telegram channel. And there's some other social channels you guys can check out as well. All right, I think I've rambled long enough for this video. Until next time, bye.